from around the globe. It's theCUBE, covering Space and Cybersecurity Symposium 2020, hosted by Cal Poly.
Hello everyone, welcome to this special virtual conference, the Space and Cybersecurity Symposium 2020, put on by Cal Poly with support from theCUBE. I'm John Furrier, your host and Master of Ceremonies. Got a great topic today in this session, really the intersection of space and cybersecurity. This topic and this conversation is the cybersecurity workforce development through public and private partnerships. And we got a great lineup. We have Jeff Armstrong, the president of California Polytechnic State University, also known as Cal Poly. Jeffrey, thanks for jumping on. And Bong Gumahad, the second director of C4 ISR Division, and he's joining us from the Office of the Undersecretary of Defense for the Acquisition and Sustainment of Department of Defense, DoD. And of course, Steve Jacques, Executive Director, Founder, National Security Space Association, and Managing Partner at Velos. Gentlemen, thank you for joining me for this session. We got an hour conversation. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you.
So we got a virtual event here. We got an hour to have a great conversation. I'd love for you guys to do an opening statement on how you see the development through public and private partnerships around cybersecurity and space. Jeff, we'll start with you.
Well, thanks very much, John. It's great to be on with all of you. On behalf of Cal Poly, welcome everyone. Educating the workforce of tomorrow is our mission at Cal Poly, whether that means traditional undergraduates, master's students, or increasingly mid-career professionals looking to upskill or reskill. Our signature pedagogy is learn by doing, which means that our graduates arrive at employers ready day one with practical skills and experience. We have long thought of ourselves as lucky to be on California's beautiful Central Coast, but in recent years, as we've developed closer relationships with Vandenberg Air Force Base, hopefully the future permanent headquarters of the United States Space Command, with Vandenberg and other regional partners, we have discovered that our location is even more advantageous than we thought. We're just 50 miles away from Vandenberg, a little closer than UC Santa Barbara, and the base represents the southern border of what we have come to think of as the Central Coast region. Cal Poly and Vandenberg Air Force Base have partnered to support regional economic development, to encourage the development of a commercial spaceport, to advocate for the Space Command headquarters coming to Vandenberg and other ventures. These partnerships have been possible because both parties stand to benefit. Vandenberg by securing new streams of revenue, workforce, and local supply chain, and Cal Poly by helping to grow local jobs for graduates, internship opportunities for students, and research and entrepreneurship opportunities for faculty and staff. Crucially, what's good for Vandenberg Air Force Base and for Cal Poly is also good for the Central Coast and the U.S., creating new head of household jobs, infrastructure, and opportunity. Our goal is that these new jobs bring more diversity and sustainability to the region. This regional economic development has taken on a life of its own, spawning a new nonprofit called REACH, which coordinates development efforts from Vandenberg Air Force Base in the south to Camp Roberts in the north. Another factor that has facilitated our relationship with Vandenberg Air Force Base is that we have some of the same friends. For example, Northrop Grumman has long been an important defense contractor and an important partner to Cal Poly, funding scholarships and facilities that have allowed us to stay current with technology and to attract highly qualified students for whom Cal Poly's costs would otherwise be prohibitive. For almost 20 years, Northrop Grumman has funded scholarships for Cal Poly students. This year, they're funding 64 scholarships, some directly in our College of Engineering, and most through our Cal Poly Scholars Program. Cal Poly Scholars support both incoming freshmen and transfer students. These are especially important because it allows us to provide additional support and opportunities to a group of students who are mostly first generation, low income, and underrepresented, and who otherwise might not choose to attend Cal Poly. They also allow us to recruit from partner high schools with large populations of underrepresented minority students, including the Fortune High School in Elk Grove, which we've developed a deep and lasting connection. We know that the best work is done by balanced teams that include multiple and diverse perspectives. These scholarships help us achieve that goal. And I'm sure you know Northrop Grumman was recently awarded a very large contract to modernize the U.S. ICBM Armory, with some of the work being done at Vandenberg Air Force Base, thus supporting the local economy and protecting. Protecting our efforts in space requires partnerships in the digital realm. Cal Poly has partnered with many private companies, such as AWS. Our partnerships with Amazon Web Services has enabled us to train our students with next-generation cloud engineering skills, in part through our jointly created Digital Transformation Hub. Another partnership example is among Cal Poly's California Cybersecurity Institute, College of Engineering, and the California National Guard. This partnership is focused on preparing a cyber-ready workforce by providing faculty and students with a hands-on research and learning environment, side by side with military, law enforcement professionals, and cyber experts. We also have a long-standing partnership with PG&E, most recently focused on workforce development and redevelopment. Many of our graduates do indeed go on to careers in aerospace and defense industry. As a rough approximation, more than 4,500 Cal Poly graduates list aerospace or defense as their employment sector on LinkedIn. And it's not just our engineers and computer sciences. When I was speaking to our fellow panelists not too long ago, speaking to Bong, we learned that Rachel Sims, one of our liberal arts majors, is working in his office. So shout out to you, Rachel. And then finally, of course, some of our graduates soar to extraordinary heights, such as Commander Victor Glover, who will be heading to the International Space Station later this year. As I close, all of which is to say that we are deeply committed to workforce development and redevelopment, that we understand the value of public-private partnerships, and that we're eager to find new ways in which to benefit everyone from this further cooperation. So we're committed to the region, the state, and the nation, and our past efforts in space, cybersecurity, and links to our partners at, as I indicated, aerospace industry and governmental partners provides a unique position for us to move forward in the interface of space and cybersecurity. Thank you so much, John.
President Armstrong, thank you very much for the comments, and congratulations to Cal Poly for being on the forefront of innovation and really taking a unique progressive view, and want to tip your hat to you guys over there. Thank you very much for those comments. Appreciate it. Bong, Department of Defense, exciting. We've got to defend the nation. Space is global. Your opening statement.
Yes, sir. Thanks, John. Appreciate that. Hey, thank you, everybody. I'm honored to be in this panel along with President Armstrong of Cal Poly and my longtime friend and colleague, Steve Jacques of the National Security Space Association, to discuss a very important topic of cybersecurity workforce development, as President Armstrong alluded to. I'll tell you, both of these organizations, Cal Poly and the NSSA, have done and continue to do an exceptional job at finding talent, recruiting them, and training current and future leaders and technical professionals that we vitally need for our nation's growing space programs, as well as our collective national security. Earlier today, during session 3, I, along with my colleague, Chris Henson, discussed space cybersecurity and how the space domain is changing the landscape of future conflicts. I discussed the rapid emergence of commercial space with the proliferations of hundreds, if not thousands, of satellites, providing a variety of services, including communications, allowing for global internet connectivity as one example. Within DoD, we continue to look at how we can leverage this opportunity. I tell you, one of the enabling technologies is the use of small satellites, which are inherently cheaper and perhaps more flexible than the traditional bigger systems that we have historically used and employed for DoD. Certainly not lost on me is the fact that Cal Poly pioneered CubeSats 20-some years ago, and they set the standard for the use of these systems today. So they saw the value and benefit gained way ahead of everybody else, it seems. And Cal Poly's focus on training and education is commendable. I'm especially impressed by the efforts of another of Steve's colleague, the current CIO, Mr. Bill Britton, with his high energy push to attract the next generation of innovators. Earlier this year, I had planned on participating in this year's Cyber Innovation Challenge in June, where Cal Poly hosts California middle and high school students and challenge them with situations to test their cyber knowledge. I tell you, I wish I had that kind of opportunity when I was a kid. Unfortunately, the pandemic changed the plan, but I truly look forward to future events such as these to participate in. Now I want to recognize my good friend, Steve Jacques, whom I've known for perhaps too long of a time here, over 2 decades or so, who is an acknowledged space expert. And personally, I truly applaud him for having the foresight a few years back to form the National Security Space Association to help the entire space enterprise navigate through not only technology, but policy issues and challenges and pave the way for operationalizing space. Space is our newest warfighting domain. That's not a secret anymore. And while it is a unique area, it shares a lot of common traits with the other domains, such as land, air, and sea. Obviously, all are strategically important to the defense of the United States. In conflict, they will all be contested, and therefore they all need to be defended. One domain alone will not win future conflicts. In a joint operation, we must succeed in all. So defending space is critical as defending our other operational domains. Funny, space is no longer the sanctuary available only to the government. Increasingly, as I discussed in a previous session, commercial space is taking the lead in a lot of different areas, including R&D, the so-called new space. So the cybersecurity threat is even more demanding and even more challenging. The U.S. considers unfettered access to and freedom to operate in space vital to advancing the security, economic prosperity, and scientific knowledge of the country, thus making cyberspace an inseparable component of America's financial, social, government, and political life. We stood up U.S. Space Force a year ago or so as the newest military service. Like the other services, its mission is to organize, train, and equip space forces in order to protect U.S. and allied interests in space and to provide space capabilities to the Joint Force. Imagine combining that, this U.S. Space Force, with the U.S. Cyber Command to unify the direction of space and cyberspace operation, strengthen DoD capabilities, and integrate and bolster DoD cyber experience. Now, of course, to enable all of this requires a trained and professional cadre of cybersecurity experts, combining a good mix of policy as well as high technical skill set. Much like we're seeing in STEM, we need to attract more people to this growing field. Now, the DoD has recognized the importance of the cybersecurity workforce, and we have implemented policies to encourage its growth. Back in 2013, the Deputy Secretary of Defense signed the DoD Cyberspace Workforce Strategy to create a comprehensive, well-equipped cybersecurity team to respond to national security concerns. Now, this strategy also created a program that encourages collaboration between the DoD and private sector employees. We call this the Cyber Information Technology Exchange Program, or CITEP. It's an exchange program which is very interesting, in which a private sector employee can actually work for the DoD in a cybersecurity position that spans across multiple mission-critical areas important to the DoD. A key responsibility of the cybersecurity community is military leaders on the related threats and the cybersecurity actions we need to have to defeat these threats. We talk about rapid acquisition, agile business processes and practices to speed up innovation. Likewise, cybersecurity must keep up with this challenge. So cybersecurity needs to be right there with the challenges and changes, and this requires exceptional personnel. We need to attract talent, invest in the people now to grow a robust cybersecurity workforce for the future. I look forward to the panel discussion, John. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bong, for those comments. And new challenges are new opportunities and new possibilities. And freedom to operate in space, critical. Thank you for those comments. Looking forward to chatting further. Steve Jacques, Executive Director of NSSA. You're up, opening statement.
Thank you, John, and echoing Bong's thanks to Cal Poly for pulling this important event together, and frankly for allowing the National Security Space Association to be a part of it. Likewise, we, on behalf of the association, I'm delighted and honored to be on this panel with President Armstrong, along with my friend and colleague Bong Gumahad. Something for you all to know about Bong. He spent the first 20 years of his career in the Air Force doing space programs. He then went into industry for several years and then came back into government to serve. Very few people do that. So Bong, on behalf of the space community, we thank you for your lifelong devotion to service to our nation. We really appreciate that. And I also echo Bong's shout out to that guy, Bill Britton, who's been a longtime co-conspirator of ours for a long time. And you're doing great work there in the cyber program at Cal Poly, Bill. Keep it up. But Professor Armstrong, keep a close eye on him. I would like to offer a little extra context to the great comments made by President Armstrong and Bong. In our view, the timing of this conference really could not be any better. We all recently reflected again on that tragic 9/11 surprise attack on our homeland, and it's an appropriate time, we think, to take pause. While a percentage of you in the audience here weren't even born or were babies then, for the most of us, it still feels like yesterday. And moreover, a tragedy like 9/11 has taught us a lot, to include to be more vigilant, always keep our collective eyes and ears open, to include those, quote, eyes and ears from space, making sure nothing like this ever happens again. So this conference is a key aspect. Protecting our nation requires we work in a cybersecure environment at all times. But the fascinating thing about space systems is we can't see them. Sure, we see space launches. Man, there's nothing more invigorating than that. But after launch, they become invisible. So what are they really doing up there? What are they doing to enable our quality of life in the United States and in the world? Well, to illustrate, I'd like to paraphrase elements of an article in Forbes magazine by Bong's and my good friend Chuck Beams. Chuck is a space guy, actually had Bong's job a few years in the Pentagon. He's now chairman and chief strategy officer at York Space Systems, and in his spare time, he's chairman of the Small Sat Alliance. Chuck speaks in words that everyone can understand, so I'd like to give you some of his words out of his article, paraphrased somewhat. So these are Chuck's words. Let's talk about average Joe and plain Jane. Before heading to the airport for a business trip to New York City, Joe checks the weather forecast, informed by NOAA's weather satellites, to see what to pack for the trip. He then calls an Uber, that space app everybody uses, that matches riders with drivers via GPS to take him to the airport. So Joe has lunch at the airport. Unbeknownst to him, his organic lunch is made with the help of precision farming, made possible through optimized irrigation and fertilization with remote spectral sensing coming from space and GPS. On the plane, the pilot navigates around weather, aided by GPS and NOAA's weather satellites, and Joe makes his meeting on time to join his New York colleagues in a video call with a key customer in Singapore, made possible by telecommunications satellites. En route to his next meeting, Joe receives notice changing the location of the meeting to the other side of town. So he calmly tells Siri to adjust his destination, and his satellite-guided Google Maps redirects him to the new location. That evening, Joe watches the news, broadcast via satellite. The report details a meeting among world leaders discussing the developing crisis in Syria. As it turns out, various forms of, quote, remotely sensed information collected from satellites indicate that yet another banned chemical weapon may have been used on its own people. Before going to bed, Joe decides to call his parents and congratulate them for their wedding anniversary as they cruise across the Atlantic. Made possible again by communication satellites, and Joe's parents can enjoy the call without even wondering how it happened. The next morning, back home, Joe's wife, Jane, is involved in a car accident. Her vehicle skids off the road. She's knocked unconscious. But because of her satellite-equipped OnStar system, the crash is detected immediately, and first responders show up on the scene in time. Joe receives the news, books an early trip home, sends flowers to his wife as he orders another Uber to the airport. Over that 24 hours, Joe and Jane used space system applications for nearly every part of their day. Imagine the consequences if at any point they were somehow denied those services, whether they be by natural causes or a foreign hostility. And each of these satellite applications used in this case were initially developed for military purposes and continue to be, but also have remarkable application on our way of life. Just many people just don't know that. So ladies and gentlemen, now you know, thanks to Chuck Beams. Well, the United States has a proud heritage of being the world's leading spacefaring nation. Dating back to the Eisenhower and Kennedy years, today we have mature and robust systems operating from space, providing overhead reconnaissance to, quote, watch and listen, provide missile warning, communications, positioning, navigation, and timing from our GPS system, much of which you heard in Lieutenant General J.T. Thompson's earlier speech. These systems are not only integral to our national security, but also to our quality of life. As Chuck told us, we simply no longer can live without these systems as a nation, and for that matter, as a world. But over the years, adversaries like China, Russia, and other countries have come to realize the value of space systems and are aggressively playing catch up, while also pursuing capabilities that will challenge our systems. As many of you know, in 2007, China demonstrated its ASAT system by actually shooting down one of its own satellites, and has been aggressively developing counter-space systems to disrupt ours. So in a heavily congested space environment, our systems are now being contested like never before and will continue to be. Well, as Bong mentioned, the United States has responded to these changing threats. In addition to adding ways to protect our system, the administration and Congress recently created the United States Space Force and the Operational United States Space Command, the latter of which you heard President Armstrong and other Californians hope is going to be located at Vandenberg Air Force Base. Combined with our intelligence community, today we have focused military and civilian leadership now in space, and that's a very, very good thing. Commensurately, on the industry side, we did create the National Security Space Association, devoted solely to supporting the national security space enterprise. We're based here in the DC area, but we have arms and legs across the country. And we are loaded with extraordinary talent in scores of former government executives. So NSSA is joined at the hip with our government customers to serve and to support. We're busy with a multitude of activities underway, ranging from a number of thought-provoking policy papers, our recurring space-time webcasts, supporting Congress's Space Power Caucus, and other main serious efforts. Check us out at nssaspace.org. One of our strategic priorities, and central to today's events, is to actively promote and nurture the workforce development, just like Cal Poly. We will work with our U.S. government customers, industry leaders, and academia to attract and recruit students to join the space world, whether in government or industry, and to assist in mentoring and training as their careers progress. On that point, we're delighted to be working with Cal Poly as we hopefully will undertake a new pilot program with them very soon. So students, stay tuned. Something I can tell you, space is really cool. While our nation's satellite systems are technical and complex, our nation's government and industry workforce is highly diverse, with a combination of engineers, physicists, and mathematicians, but also with a large non-technical expertise as well. Think about how government gets these systems designed, manufactured, launched, and into orbit and operating. They do this via contracts with our aerospace industry, requiring talents across the board, from cost estimating, cost analysis, budgeting, procurement, legal, and many other support tasks that are integral to the mission. Many thousands of people work in the space workforce, tens of billions of dollars every year. This is really cool stuff, and no matter what your education background, a great career to be part of. So in summary, as Bong had mentioned as well, there's a great deal of exciting challenges ahead. We will see a new renaissance in space in the years ahead, and in some cases, it's already begun. Billionaires like Jeff Bezos, Elon Musk, Sir Richard Branson are in the game, stimulating new ideas and business models. Other private investors and startup companies, space companies, are now coming in from all angles. The exponential advancement of technology and microelectronics now allows the potential for a plethora of small-sat systems to possibly replace older satellites the size of a Greyhound bus. It's getting better by the day, and central to this conference, cybersecurity is paramount to our nation's critical infrastructure in space. So once again, thanks very much, and I look forward to the further conversation.
Steve, thank you very much. Space is cool, it's relevant, but it's important, as you pointed out in your awesome story about how it impacts our life every day. So I really appreciate that. Great story. I'm glad you took the time to share that. If we got the part about the drone coming over and the crime scene and mapping it out, for you, but that would add that to the story later. Great stuff. My first question is, let's get into the conversations because I think this is super important. President Armstrong, I'd like you to talk about some of the points that was teased out by Bong and Steve. One in particular is the comment around how military research was important in developing all these capabilities, which is impacting all of our lives through that story. It was the military research that has enabled a generation and generation of value for consumers. This is kind of this workforce conversation. There are opportunities now with research and grants, and this is a funding of innovation that it's highly accelerated, it's happening very quickly. Can you comment on how research and the partnerships to get that funding into the universities is critical?
Yeah, I really appreciate that and appreciate the comments of my colleagues. And it really boils down to me to partnerships, public-private partnerships. I mentioned Northrop Grumman, but we have partnerships with Lockheed Martin, Boeing, Raytheon, SpaceX, JPL. Also a member of an organization called Business Higher Education Forum, which brings together university presidents and CEOs of companies. There's been focus on cybersecurity and data science, and I hope that we can spill into cybersecurity in space. But those partnerships in the past have really brought a lot forward. At Cal Poly, as mentioned, we've been involved with CubeSat. We've had some secure work, and we want to plan to do more of that in the future. Those partnerships are essential, not only for getting the R&D done, but also the students, the faculty, whether master's or undergraduate, can be involved with that work. They get that real life experience, whether it's on campus or virtually now during COVID or at the location with the partner, whether it may be governmental or industry. And then they're even better equipped to hit the ground running. And of course, we'd love to see even more of our students graduate with clearance so that they could do some of that secure work as well. So these partnerships are absolutely critical. And it's also in the context of trying to bring the best and the brightest in all demographics of California and the US into this field to really be successful. So these partnerships are essential, and our goal is to grow them, just like I know our other colleagues in the CSU and the UC are planning to do.
You know, just as my age, I grew up in the 80s in college, and they're in that systems generation, and the generation before me, they really kind of pioneered the space that spawned the computer revolution. I mean, you look at these key inflection points in our lives, they were really funded through these kinds of real deep research. Bong, talk about that, because we're living in an age of cloud, and Bezos was mentioned, Elon Musk, Sir Richard Branson. You got new ideas coming in from the outside. You have an accelerated clock now in terms of the innovation cycles. And so you got to react differently. You guys have programs to go outside of the Defense Department. How important is this? Because the workforce that are in schools and or folks reskilling are out there, and you've been on both sides of the table. So share your thoughts.
No, thanks, John. And thanks for the opportunity to respond to that. And that's what, you hit on the nose. Back in the 80s, R&D in space especially was dominated by government funding, contracts and so on. But things have changed. As Steve pointed out, a lot of these commercial entities funded by billionaires are coming out of the woodwork, funding R&D, so they're taking the lead. So what we can do from within the DoD and government is truly take advantage of the work they've done. Since they're paving the way to new approaches and a new way of doing things, and I think we can certainly learn from that and leverage off of that. It saves us money from an R&D standpoint, while benefiting from the product that they deliver. Within DoD, talking about workforce development, we have prioritized and we have policies now to attract and retain the talent we need. I had the folks do some research, and looks like from a cybersecurity workforce standpoint, a recent study done, I think last year in 2019, found that the cybersecurity workforce gap in the U.S. is nearing 500,000 people, even though it is a growing industry. So the pipeline needs to be strengthened, getting people through, starting them young, getting through college, like as Professor Armstrong indicated, because we're going to need them to be in place, in a period of about maybe a decade or so. On top of that, of course, is the continuing issue we have with the gap with STEM students. We can't afford not to have expertise in place to support all the things we're doing within DoD, not only DoD, but the commercial side as well. Thank you.
How's the gap get filled? I mean, this is the again, you got cybersecurity. I mean, with space, it's a whole nother kind of surface area, if you will. It's not really surface area, but it is an IoT device if you think about it, but it does have the same challenges. That's kind of current and progressive with cybersecurity. Where's the gap get filled, Steve or President Armstrong? I mean, how do you solve the problem and address this gap in the workforce? What are some solutions and what approaches do we need to put in place?
Steve, go ahead. I'll follow up.
Okay, thanks. I'll let you correct me. It's a really good question, and it's the way I would approach it is to focus on it holistically and to acknowledge it up front, and it comes with our teaching, et cetera, across the board. And from an industry perspective, I mean, we see it. We've got to have secure systems with everything we do. And promoting this and getting students at early ages and mentoring them and throwing internships at them is so paramount to the whole cycle. And that's kind of, and it really takes focused attention. And we continue to use the word focus from an NSSA perspective. We know the challenges that are out there. There are such talented people in the workforce on the government side, but not nearly enough of them. And likewise, on the industry side, we could use more as well. But when you get down to it, we can connect dots. The aspects that Professor Armstrong talked about earlier, to where you continue to work partnerships as much as you possibly can. We hope to be a part of that network, that ecosystem, if you will, of taking common objectives and working together to kind of make these things happen, and to bring the power, not just of one or two companies, but of our entire membership to help out.
President Armstrong.
I would also add it again. It's back to the partnerships that I talked about earlier. One of our partners is high schools and schools. Fortune, Margaret Fortune, who worked in a couple of administrations in California across party lines in education. Their fifth graders all visit Cal Poly and visit our Learn by Doing lab. And you've got to get students interested in STEM at an early age. We also need the partnerships, the scholarships, the financial aid, so the students can graduate with minimal to no debt to really hit the ground running. And that's exacerbated and really stressed now with this COVID-induced recession. California supports higher education at a higher rate than most states in the nation, but that has dropped this year for reasons we all understand due to COVID. And so our partnerships, our creativity, and making sure that we help those that need the most help financially, that's really key because the gaps are huge. As my colleagues indicated, half a million jobs. And you look at the students that are in the pipeline, we've got to enhance that. And the placement rates are amazing once the students get to a place like Cal Poly or some of our other amazing CSU and UC campuses. Placement rates are like 94%. Many of our engineers, they have jobs lined up a year before they graduate. So it's just going to take key partnerships working together and that continued partnership with government, local, of course, our state, the CSU, and partners like we have here today, both Steve and Bong. So partnerships, the theme.
That's a great point.
If I could add,
okay, go ahead.
The collaboration with universities is one that we put a lot of emphasis in. It may not be a well-known fact, but as an example, the National Security Agency's National Centers of Academic Excellence in Cyber Defense works with over 270 colleges and universities across the United States to educate and certify future cyber first responders, as an example. So that's vibrant and healthy, and something that we ought to take advantage of.
Well, I got the brain trust here on this topic. I want to get your thoughts on this one point, because I'd like to define, what is a public-private partnership? Because the theme that's coming out of the symposium is the script has been flipped. It's a modern era. Things are accelerated. You got security. So you got all these things kind of happening. It's a modern approach, and you're seeing a digital transformation play out all over the world in business and in the public sector. So what is a modern public-private partnership, and what does it look like? today because people are learning differently. COVID has pointed out what's we're seeing right now, how people, the progressions of knowledge and learning, truth, it's all changing. How do you guys view the modern version of public-private partnership and some examples and some proof points? Can you guys share that? We'll start with you, Professor Armstrong.
Yeah, as I indicated earlier, we've had, and I could give other examples, but Northrop Grumman, they helped us with a cyber lab many years ago that is maintained directly, the software, the connection outside, it's its own unit, so the students can learn to hack, they can learn to penetrate defenses, and I know that has already had some considerations of space. But that's a benefit to both parties. So a good public-private partnership has benefits to both entities. And the common factor for universities with a lot of these partnerships is the talent. The talent that is needed, what we've been working on for years of that undergraduate or master's or PhD programs. But now it's also spilling into upskilling and reskilling. As jobs folks are in jobs today that didn't exist 2 years, 3 years, 5 years ago. But it also spills into other aspects that can expand even more. We're very fortunate. We have land. There's opportunities. We have one tech park project. We're expanding our tech park. I think we'll see opportunities for that, and it'll be adjusted due to the virtual world that we're all learning more and more about, in which we were in before COVID. But I also think that person to person is going to be important. I want to make sure that I'm driving across a bridge or that satellite's being launched by the engineer that's had at least some in-person training to do that. And that experience, especially as a first-time freshman coming on a campus, getting that experience, expanding it as an adult. And we're going to need those public-private partnerships in order to continue to fund those at a level that is at the excellence we need for these STEM and engineering fields.
It's interesting, people and technology can work together in these partnerships in a new way. Bong, Steve, reaction to the modern version of what a public, successful private partnership looks like?
If I could jump in, John, I think historically DoDs have had a high bar to overcome, if you will, in terms of getting rapid pulling in new companies to the fold, if you will, and not rely heavily on the usual suspects of vendors and the like. And I think DoD has done a good job over the last couple of years of trying to reduce that burden of working with us. The Air Force, I think they're pioneering this idea around pitch days, where companies come in, do a 2-hour pitch, and immediately notified of an award without having to wait a long time to get feedback on the quality of the product and so on. So I think we're trying to do our best to strengthen that partnership with companies outside the main group of people that we typically use.
Steve, any reaction, any comment to add?
Yeah, I would add a couple. These are very excellent thoughts. It's about taking a little gamble by coming out of your comfort zone. The world that Bong lives in and I used to live in the past has been quite structured. It's really about, we know what the threat is, we need to go fix it, we'll design a system, go make it happen, we'll fly it. Life is so much more complicated than that. And so it's really, to me, I mean, you take an example of the pitch days that Bong talks about. I think taking the gamble by attempting to just do a lot of pilot programs, work the trust factor between government folks and the industry folks and academia, because we are all in this together in a lot of ways. For example, I mean, we just sent a paper to the White House at their request about, what would we do from a workforce development perspective? And we hope to embellish on this over time once the initiative matures. But we have a piece of it, for example, is a thing we call Clear for Success. Getting back to President Armstrong's comments at the collegiate level, high quality folks are in high demand. So why don't we put together a program that grabs kids in their underclass years, identifies folks that are interested in doing something like this, get them scholarships, have have a job waiting for them that they're contracted for before they graduate. And when they graduate, they walk with an SCI clearance. We believe that can be done. So, and that's an example of ways in which private partnerships can happen, to where you now have a talented kid ready to go on day one. We think those kind of things can happen. It just gets back down to being focused on specific initiatives, giving them a chance, and run as many pilot programs as you can, like pitch days.
That's a great point. It's a good segue. Go ahead, President Armstrong.
I just want to jump in and echo both the Bong and Steve's comments. But Steve, that your point of our graduates, we consider them ready day one. Well, they need to be ready day one and ready to go secure. We totally support that and love to follow up offline with you on that. That's exciting and needed, yeah. Very much needed more of it. Some of it's happening, but we certainly have been thinking a lot about that and making some plans.
And that's a great example, a good segue to my next question. This kind of reimagining these workflows is kind of breaking down the old way and bringing in kind of the new way, accelerate all kind of new things. There are creative ways to address this workforce issue, and this is the next topic. How can we employ new creative solutions? Because let's face it, it's not the days of get your engineering degree and go interview for a job and then get slotted in and get the the programs and you matriculate through the system. This is multiple disciplines. Cybersecurity points at that. You could be smart in math and have a degree in anthropology and be one of the best cyber talents on the planet. So this is a new world. What are some creative approaches that expand the workforce?
If I could, John, one of the things I think that's a challenge to us is, somehow we got made working with the government sexy, right? Part of the challenge we have is attracting the right level of skill sets and personnel, but we're competing oftentimes with the commercial side. The gaming industry, as an example, is a big deal, and those are the same talents we need to support a lot of the programs we have in DoD. So somehow we have to do a better job, to Steve's point, of making the work within DoD, within the government, something that they would be interested in early on. So attract them early. I kind of talked about Cal Poly's challenge program that they were going to have in June, inviting high school kids. Really excited about the whole idea of space and cybersecurity and so on. Those are some of the things that I think we have to do and continue to do over the course of the next several years.
Awesome. Any other creative approaches that you guys see working, or might be an idea, or just to kind of stoke the ideation out there? Internships, obviously internships are known, but there's got to be new ways.
Well, I think you can take what Steve was talking about earlier, getting students in high school and aligning them sometimes that first internship, not just between the freshman and sophomore year, but before they enter Cal Poly per se, and they're involved. So I think that's absolutely key, getting them involved many other ways. We have an example of upskilling or work redevelopment here in the Central Coast. PG&E Diablo nuclear plant that is going to decommission in around 2024. And so we have an ongoing partnership to work and to reposition those employees for the future. So that's, engineering and beyond, but think about that just in the manner that you were talking about. So the upskilling and reskilling, and I think that's where, we were talking about that. Purdue University, other California universities have been dealing with online programs before COVID. And now with COVID, so many more faculty were pushed into that area. There's going to be much more going. And talk about workforce development and upskilling and reskilling. The amount of training and education of our faculty across the country in virtual and delivery has been huge. So there's always silver linings in the cloud.
I want to get your guys' thoughts on one final question as we end this segment. And we've seen on the commercial side with cloud computing in these highly accelerated environments where, SaaS business models, subscription, that's on the business side. But one of the things that's clear in this trend is technology and people work together, and technology augments the people component. So I'd love to get your thoughts as we look at a world now, we're living in COVID. Cal Poly, you guys have remote learning right now. It's the infancy, it's a whole new disruption, if you will, but also an opportunity to enable new ways to collaborate, right? So if you look at people and technology, Can you guys share your view and vision on how communities can be developed, how these digital technologies and people can work together faster to get to the truth or make a discovery, hire, to build the workforce? These are opportunities. How do you guys view this new digital transformation?
Well, I think there's huge opportunities in just what we're doing with this symposium. We're filming this on one day and it's going to stream live, and then the four of us can participate and chat with participants while it's going on. That's amazing, and I appreciate you, John, you bringing that to this symposium. I think there's more and more that we can do. From a Cal Poly perspective, with our pedagogy so linked to learn by doing, in-person will always be important to us, but we see virtual, we see partnerships like this can expand and enhance our ability and minimize the in-person time, decrease the time to degree, enhance graduation rate, eliminate opportunity gaps for students that don't have the same advantages. So I think the technological aspect of this is tremendous. Then on the upskilling and reskilling, where employees are all over, they can be reached virtually. And then maybe they come to a location or really advanced technology allows them to get it hands-on virtually, or they come to that location and get it in a hybrid format. So I'm very excited about the future and what we can do. And it's going to be different with every university, with every partnership. It's one size does not fit all.
It's so many possibilities. Bong, I can almost imagine a social network that has a verified, secure clearance. I can jump in and have a little cloak of secrecy and can collaborate with the DoD possibly in the future. But these are the kind of crazy ideas that are needed. Aren't your thoughts on this whole digital transformation, cross-pollination?
I think technology is going to be revolutionary here, John. We're focusing lately on what we call digital engineering to quicken the pace of delivering capability to the warfighter. As an example, I think AI, machine language, all that's going to have a major play in how we operate in the future. We're embracing 5G technologies, right? The ability for zero latency, more IoT, more automation of the supply chain, that sort of thing. I think the future ahead of us is very encouraging. I think it's going to do a lot for national defense and certainly the security of the country.
Steve, your final thoughts. Space systems are systems and they're connected to other systems that are connected to people. Your thoughts on this digital transformation opportunity?
Such a great question and such a fun, great challenge ahead of us. Echoing my colleagues' sentiments, I would add to it, a lot of this I think we should do some focusing on campaigning so that people can feel comfortable to include the Congress to do things a little bit differently. We're not attuned to doing things fast, but the dramatic, the way technology is just going like crazy right now, I think it ties back to hoping to convince some of our senior leaders on what I call both sides of the Potomac River that it's worth taking these gambles. We do need to take some of these things in a very proactive way. And I'm very confident and excited and comfortable that this is going to be a great time ahead and all for the better.
I always step on myself when I talk about DC because I'm not a lawyer and I'm not a political person, but I always say less lawyers, more techies in Congress and Senate. So I always get in trouble when I say that. Sorry, President Armstrong, go ahead.
Yeah, no, just one other point. And Steve's alluded to this and Bong did as well. I mean, we've got to be less risk averse in these partnerships. That doesn't mean reckless, but we have to be less risk averse. And I would also, I have, as you talk about technology, I have to reflect on something that happened in, you both talked a bit about Bill Britton and his impact on Cal Poly and what we're doing. But we were faced a few years ago of replacing a traditional a data warehouse, data storage, data center, and we partnered with AWS. And thank goodness we had that in progress and it enhanced our bandwidth on our campus before COVID hit. And with this partnership with the Digital Transformation Hub. So there's a great example where we had that going. That's not something we could have started, COVID's hit, let's flip that switch. And so we have to be proactive and we also have to not be risk averse and do some things differently. Yeah. That has really salvaged the experience for students right now as things are flowing well. We only have about 12% of our courses in person, those essential courses, and I'm just grateful for those partnerships that I've talked about today.
Yeah, and it's a shining example of how being agile, continuous operations, these are themes that expand into space and the next workforce needs to be built. Gentlemen, thank you very much for sharing your insights. I know, Bong, you're going to go into the defense side of space in your other sessions. Thank you, gentlemen, for your time, for a great session. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you, John.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you all.
I'm John Furrier with theCUBE here in Palo Alto, California, covering and hosting with Cal Poly the Space and Cybersecurity Symposium 2020. Thanks for watching.